wanted to talk a little bit about why I am supporting Restore Britain. This video is as much for myself as it is for other people. I am trying to articulate what it is that has drawn me to Rupert Lowe and then the Restore Britain movement, and now Restore Britain as a party. So a brief bit of background about myself. I grew up in Norfolk, England. I was born in Glasgow, so technically I'm a wee Scottish lad, but not really. I'm born to English parents. I was raised in England, and I consider myself to be an Englishman. But my place of birth was Glasgow, where my father was training to be a surgeon. And then he dedicated his entire life to the National Health Service. And my mother was a nurse for various parts of life. So my upbringing, my heritage, my place of birth is in the United Kingdom or England. And I studied briefly at Edinburgh University, so I've had quite a close relationship with Scotland and been all over the UK. But the place where I now live and where I work and where I put my energy is in San Francisco in California. And while I love America and I consider it to be one of the most amazing places on earth, I will never be an American. There may become a time in the future where I have citizenship because of my son and my time here and I work here and things like that. But I don't know if that's in my future. We'll see. And I'm still figuring all of that out. But I'm increasingly excited and energized to spend more time in Britain. And that is for two reasons. One, it's the massively improving startup ecosystem in London. And two, it's because I finally have a political leader who I can believe in. And this is something I have actually never experienced. I was too young to vote during years where there were some interesting politicians. And then as soon as I came of age and started actively voting, I was faced with the likes of David Cameron, who was just such a smarmy, kind of overly slick individual. And then I left Britain and I began my travels for many years and eventually settled on the Bay Area and San Francisco. So I haven't actually voted in a national election for over 15 years. I think I only voted in one British election. So I've been adrift politically. I have been totally focused on myself. I have been totally focused on my work, and I've been totally focused on my hobbies. But those three things kind of occupied my mind. Like, how do I get better at my work? How do I make some money? And how do I enjoy my life? And that worked for a time, and then you start to put roots down. And my roots are really, I would call them British and Californian. These are the two areas that I care about. And I am involved in British politics now because it is where I have a stake. And I'm involved in local politics in San Francisco because it's where I have a stake. I consider myself to be a British guest in America. Now, let's move the focus to Restore Britain. About 18 months ago, I came across Rupert Lowe's posts on X, and I thought he seemed like a fantastic chap because his writing was so clear. As someone who's been a kind of Twitter account holder since 2006, a very active user since 2016, and very involved in like using Twitter. I have a sensitivity to people who know how to use Twitter. That's perhaps the medium on which I am most experienced. And Rupert just has it. He has the ability to command the English language, the terseness of someone who knows how to write clearly, the language choice of someone who wants to be understood instead of trying to make himself seem intelligent. And he has the strident, forthright nature of someone who's spent his life in business and is not afraid to say what he thinks. Now, when he was removed from Reform, I was a bit confused. I didn't know initially what to believe, and I was trying to understand what had happened. But very quickly, the best judge of character when it comes to business came out in support of Rupert over Nigel Farage, and that's Elon Musk. Elon has interviewed and been through more technical people than anybody else on the planet, and he put his support behind Rupert, not Nigel. He said, Nigel is weak sauce. He does not have what it takes. And Rupert, I'd never met him, that's what Elon said, but he was very excited about him as a person on X. And I trust Elon's judgment when it comes to people, because I don't think anybody has interviewed more people than Elon Musk. So I think his judgment is exceptionally good. But I started following Rupert before Elon's X-based endorsement. And then I started to see his focus. So there was this big potential energy around Ben Habib, Rupert Lowe coming together, driving something forward. But they ended up parting ways in different directions for a number of reasons. And Rupert, I think what he was doing is trying to understand the lay of the land, and he focused on his movement. And then I think he picked the most important issue of the day that was the least covered in the media and the most poorly dealt with by politicians of both the left and the right. And that is the rape of Britain. The systematic raping of tens of thousands, at least, of young women in the United Kingdom and Great Britain, in England, in Scotland, and Wales, our great country. There were of men who were shielded by communities of women who ignored the disgusting behavior and this led to the Rape Gang Inquiries, which you can go and see on X. Rape Gang Inquiry, INQIRY. I got that wrong yesterday. And it is one of the hardest things to do and watch. And so Rupert kind of put his Restore team on this issue. And that is when I realized I had to become a member of Restore Britain as a political movement. So that is when I became a donor, and I subscribed to the Cromwell Club, which is £2,500 a year, and I became a Cromwell member of Restore Britain as a movement. And this was simply because I had to see more of what Rupert was doing. I wanted to communicate that through a transaction, and I did that. And that's just the start of what I would like to contribute. But then the rumors started swirling that he's going to convert Restore into a party, and this got me really excited because he had already proved with Restore as a movement that he's capable of executing things in the political sphere outside of the standard channels of government. And he had got an incredibly bright young team of social media savvy, hardworking folks. Charlie Downs, Connor Tomlinson, Harrison Pitt. These are some of the people who are either in his team or very close to his team, who are young, energetic, hardworking men who are trying to change Britain for their children. And all of them, to me, have a great understanding of the internet, a great understanding of history, and a great understanding of how politics can and the internet can change history going forward. And Rupert has said this in an interview, but he says, his grandma told him that the older wise and the young are able, and that he brings the wisdom and that his young team bring the ability. One of the things that I do here in Silicon Valley is I try and assess brilliant young people and their team and what they're up to. And I just find Rupert's team to be incredibly credible. And I would like to contrast this to Nigel Farage and his team, where Nigel is twice divorced. Almost every single one of the MPs that he's brought along with him into Reform has singular or multiple divorces. He has attracted failed Tories to the party, and quite frankly attracted some of the worst people in the Conservative Party, like Nadeem Zahawi, who was booted out for misstating his tax affairs. And Reform has just sullied itself. And so along comes Restore, and when they announced that they're going to become a party, as we all know, the energy online around this has been incredible. The opening video from Rupert was beautiful. It was from the heart, and it was from his farm. The reaction from the online right has been absolutely fascinating, and the set of people that have rallied behind him is truly incredible. But obviously, the path from one MP, which is Rupert, to 300 MPs is enormous. It requires attracting at least 650 candidates. Maybe if you knock out a few of the safe seats of the left, maybe it's 450 candidates, and eventually fielding thousands of councillors. So there has to be something between where they're at now, which is a team of, I believe a few dozen people at max, all the way to where they want to get to, which is to control Parliament and to get elected. But the work is just beginning, but the inspiration is incredible. And I have seen many organizations go from microscopic to very large, and that's my work, is I've been around startups that have begun with kind of fewer than 10 people on the first day and are now thousands of staff. And so I have seen what exponential organizations look like in Silicon Valley all the time. And I've just got this feeling that Rupert and Restore and the movement and all of the people that have their back, it's going to be an exponential story. And it feels like a long time, 3 years before the forced date of the next general election. But that will go by real quick. And in that time, you can recruit, retain, and attract incredible talent. And what it fundamentally comes down to is, I believe Restore Britain have a set of policies that will work. And I don't want to debate those or kind of share those with people now, but that's just my feeling. That's what drew me to them. I think I'll probably make future videos about why I think they will work and go into more detail on certain things. But my support for Restore Britain began before it was a party. It began, in the small way by following Rupert, in a medium way by making a donation to the movement around the time of the rape gang inquiry. And I believe it's going to increase because of one thing and one thing only, is I want to raise my son in England quite a bit. I want him to spend ideally half the year there, or something like half the year there. And I want to spend more time in Norfolk, where I'm from, and where my family has a place, and where I grew up, which is just south of Norwich. And I need to believe that Britain can be better for my son. I had to leave because I wanted to make my way in the world of technology startups, and San Francisco is the best place to do that. And right now I'm able to talk to you and sit here and discuss this because of the magic of technology, right? Like, I am sat here and the car is driving itself. It's pretty incredible. But I am desperate to spend more time in England and feel an affinity for my English. And I will be this summer, which I'm excited about. So, but fundamentally, Restore Britain, I think, has the right set of policies, and I'm excited for my son to potentially grow up in a Britain that has Rupert Lowe as Prime Minister and his incredible young team in the cabinet. And that's something I can visualize happening in 3 to 4 years, which will go by like that. I mean, you remember, COVID was 7 years ago now. It's wild to think that COVID started 2019 and we're here in 2026. So things can happen fast. And I am very, very optimistic. In fact, this song makes me optimistic as well. So right now I am heading into the center of San Francisco to meet up with some very interesting people. And I'm just adjusting the map. The pushback I'm getting here from Pablo Xanax Bars, which is one of the strangest names I've ever seen, is the funny thing is San Francisco is arguably one of the worst places in America. That's just not true. There's 4 blocks of it that are incredibly brutal. The Tenderloin and the surrounding area in the center of San Francisco is a dystopian nightmare. But the rest of the city is absolutely beautiful. Anyone who says that doesn't live here and doesn't understand it. And it's also got a lot better since Mayor Lurie. And that's part of the reason I'm so positive about politics, is I've seen political change improve where I live. I have seen politics reshape what it means to be a citizen of San Francisco. Things have got a lot better. And that's why I'm excited about Restore Britain, because I can feel that kind of insurgency energy. And it's very, very exciting. Oftentimes, it's easy to think that all politicians are all talk and no action. But I would argue to you that is not all true, and it's a very weak opinion, because things do happen. So they must be doing something. And if you don't like what they're doing, I subscribe to the view that if you don't want to get involved in politics, prepare to be ruled by lesser men, which is not my quote, that's from somebody else. And I think it's phenomenal, because it really articulates that if you are passive and simply give up, you are going to be forced out of your homeland. In fact, the gentleman here in the comments is saying, I couldn't leave Oregon fast enough. Well, my argument to you is that's weak. You have left a state instead of trying to change it. You have accepted the state of affairs instead of actually engaging with politics. And I didn't leave San Francisco during the pandemic. I didn't give up on it. And I am reaping the rewards of that. Similarly, I will return to Britain more often. I will be there with my family. I'll be raising my son there, and I will not give up on Britain. And I think that if you do give up on your state or your city or your country, that's fine. Exit is a way of expressing your voice. But I don't believe that's the strongest way of expressing your voice. The strongest way is to stay and invest and dig your feet in and to vote and to canvass and to do things. And what excites me is that finally in Britain, there's somebody who I believe is doing things, is changing things, is making things better, is trying. And that's Restore Britain. Rupert Lowe and his team. I want to highlight them. Charlie Downs and Harrison Pitt are the closest to him. And they are going to try and make a run of it. And the thing that excites me is that if they succeed, we will always know that it was because folks stood up and tried instead of just giving up and moving. I think it's very fair to levy the criticism at me that, well, you moved to California, everything's all right for you. And that's fair, and I take that criticism hand on heart. But why did I move to California? I moved because I couldn't find a startup ecosystem in London that was receptive to some of my ideas. I don't believe that's true anymore, by the way. I think London's startup ecosystem is doing really, really great things despite the government. And if it had a proper government in charge that got out of the people's way, I think that London could be one of the best places to start a company in the world outside San Francisco. But yeah, that's my kind of personal rambling and summary as to why I'm backing Restore Britain. And thank you for listening. I appreciate the pushback. I appreciate the comments. And thank you for letting me just stream my thoughts. Cheers, everybody. Bye-bye.